8 years ago, the world said goodbye to one of its most enchanting storytellers, a man whose gentle smile and playful mischief transported us to chocolate factories and mad laboratories alike. At the time, fans around the globe mourned publicly, sharing clips of Willy Wonka's golden top hat and quoting Dr. Frankenstein's exuberant "It's alive." But behind the laughter and the fond remembrances, a silent figure watched from the shadows: Gene Wilder's wife. For almost a decade, she held her peace, choosing instead to preserve private memories over juicy headlines. Today, that silence finally ends, and what she reveals will challenge everything you thought you knew about the man behind the legend. To understand why she waited 8 years to speak, we have to rewind to the days immediately following Gene's passing. The news broke swiftly, an icon gone at age 83, leaving behind a legacy of joy and wonder. Entertainment outlets scrambled for reaction shots, co-stars, directors, writers all lined up to offer condolences. But Gene's closest confidant, his partner in life, remained off camera, unquoted and unseen. Whispers began to swirl: was she still grieving too deeply? Did she fear betraying intimate moments? Or was there something more sensitive, perhaps painful, that she wasn't ready to share? Rumors proliferated, but no one could pin down the truth until now. From the moment he first met her, Gene Wilder's wife occupied a place few outsiders ever glimpsed. Their whirlwind romance remains the stuff of legend: a chance encounter at a Hollywood party, a shared laugh over an ill-fated hobby, a stolen afternoon spent exploring antique bookstores. According to friends, the pair fell so quickly and so deeply in love that they seemed to move in perfect concert, as though two halves of the same soul finally united. Yet for all the spark and the warmth, few knew of the quiet struggles they faced behind closed doors: financial pressures, the shadow of fan adoration that sometimes felt like an intruder at their dinner table, and the relentless demands of fame that tested their bond. Contrast that early bliss with the relentless glare of cinematic success. As Gene's career soared, from the zany humor of Mel Brooks' debut to the heartfelt whimsy of Wonka's Chocolate Factory, his wife found herself balancing two worlds. On red carpets and at gala screenings, she stood beside him, offering a calm anchor to his restless spirit. But the cameras never truly captured the late-night conversations, the soft voiceovers delivering hope when he doubted himself, the handwritten letters she tucked into his coat pocket before he left for filming. In public, they were the perfect couple; in private, they navigated the same fears and desires that any pair might face, but with the added weight of Hollywood's unforgiving spotlight. And then came the darkness. In the years before Gene's passing, Alzheimer's crept in, stealing memories one by one. She watched helplessly as the man who once brimmed with energy and mischief began to forget the names of friends and the punchlines of scripts he had written himself. Yet even as she cared for him around the clock, shielding him from confusion and grief, she refused to allow pity to define their final chapter. Instead, she crafted new rituals: quiet strolls in the twilight, impromptu piano recitals in their living room, the rekindled joy of cooking his favorite childhood recipes together. These moments of tenderness remained theirs alone, hidden from public view. Yet, living in the shadow of a global icon came with its own form of loneness. Crowds cheered for Willy Wonka, but few interrupted a screening to ask about the woman in the audience, the one whose laughter had inspired some of his best on-screen moments. At premieres, she stood in solace, overwhelmed by unfamiliar faces and the flash of cameras, longing instead for a simple weekend hike or a dinner out where no one called for autographs. It was a silent sacrifice, loving someone whose work brought joy to millions while her own identity remained just outside the spotlight. She describes this period as a balancing act, finding the courage to be supportive while preserving her sense of self, a struggle that often left her questioning whether she could ever fully belong in his world. Through every triumph and every stumble, they cultivated a private lexicon of gestures: a hand squeeze during an awards speech, a note tucked inside his suit pocket before a big audition, a quiet glass of wine shared at midnight in the kitchen. Those rituals sustained them when chaos threatened to overwhelm, anchoring their love in moments no one else could see. And while public life accelerated, their secret language of affection and understanding only deepened, preparing them, if she had known, for the heartbreak and burdens to come in his final years. But as the years passed, a new challenge emerged, one that neither could have anticipated: Alzheimer's disease. It crept in slowly at first, manifesting as fleeting lapses in memory and misplaced keys. She chalked those early signs up to fatigue from long shoots or jet lag after overseas premieres. But when he began forgetting the names of close friends, and once walked onto a set expecting to film a scene that wrapped weeks earlier, she knew something deeper was unfolding. The diagnosis arrived one crisp autumn afternoon in a sterile exam room. The neurologist spoke gently, using terms like progressive and degenerative, while she sat beside him, gripping his hand as if sheer will could rewrite the report. When the doctor mentioned 6 to 10 years of decline, her world narrowed to the two faces before her, the man she loved, and the future he might never remember. In the weeks that followed, they confronted a new normal together. Morning routines became exercises in patience. At breakfast, she would slip a familiar photograph, his earliest headshot, beneath his napkin, prompting a spark of recognition as he traced the frame's edge. If he hesitated before placing a spoonful of oatmeal to his lips, she guided his hand with a soft reassurance. Their kitchen, once a stage for spontaneous cooking experiments, transformed into a sanctuary of small victories. The day he recalled the name cherry pie, the recipe he wrote decades ago, the morning he hummed the opening bars of the Willy Wonka theme. These moments of clarity were fragile treasures, and she learned to cherish them without despair over the ones that slipped away. Contrast that hope with the valleys of confusion that followed. On some days, he would arrive home convinced he was still mid-production on a film, searching through closets for a script that no longer existed. He might ask why the Oscars hadn't called, or plead to speak with Mel Brooks as though he'd lost touch years before. She navigated these scenes with a calm resolve, never correcting him harshly but gently guiding him back to the present. "They're celebrating you in a special tribute tonight," she would say, redirecting his melancholy into a smile that lit his eyes for a precious moment. When tears threatened, she offered them to him in silence, understanding that grief could be shared without words, yet caregiving proved both a labor of love and a lonely vigil. Many friends and colleagues drifted away, uncomfortable around the man who once commanded center stage but now struggled with basic recollections. Invitations to social events dwindled, under the assumption that he no longer enjoyed public appearances. Their home became more isolated, a cocoon where she handled medication schedules, meal prep, and evening wind downs. Some nights, she lay awake listening to the soft cadence of his breathing, wrestling with guilt over her own fatigue. It's okay to rest, she reminded herself, though the idea of stepping away, even briefly, felt like a betrayal. In private journals, she penned questions she dared not speak out loud. How much longer can I do this? What happens when my strength fails? Each entry ended with the same resolve: I will not let him face this alone. Meanwhile, the world continued to celebrate his past achievements without fully grasping the present reality. Tributes poured in at award ceremonies, streaming platforms highlighted his classic films, fan pages buzzed with childhood memories of Wonka's golden ticket. She took comfort in knowing that his legacy endured, yet she also felt a pang of sorrow. The man who once crafted whimsy and wonder for millions now relied on her for the simplest support, picking out clothes, recalling the names of co-stars, even brushing his hair. In press interviews, she chose to remain silent, unwilling to reduce his humanity to a tragic storyline. She feared that headlines would scream tragic decline, eclipsing decades of laughter and creativity. Instead, she protected his dignity by keeping his most vulnerable moments secure within their home's walls. Then came a turning point. During a late winter storm, the power went out, plunging their house into darkness. He awoke disoriented and frightened, believing he was far from home. In the candlelit hallway, she guided him to the living room where a single lamp cast warm shadows on the walls. She wrapped him in a blanket and began recounting stories from his earliest days: how he won his first fencing championship, the moment he adopted his stage name, the thrill of his first Broadway curtain call. As she spoke, his tension eased, his breathing slowed, and for a rare moment, his eyes regained the spark she feared lost forever. It was then she realized that telling his story, the full story, was a power greater than any pill or therapy. Her voice could bridge the gaps his memory could not traverse. That night marked the genesis of her intent to speak out. If words could bring him comfort in the dark, perhaps they could also honor the man he had been in full. She began compiling letters, diary entries, and voice recordings, fragments of a life lived vividly. Each page she added was an act of devotion and defiance of the notion that Alzheimer's could rewrite a life's worth of achievements, acts of devotion preserving the essence of a man who, in his final years, sometimes seemed to be slipping away. She resolved that when she finally broke her silence, she would present him not as a tragic figure, but as a brilliant artist whose true impact stretched far beyond any diagnosis. So why speak now, after 8 years? Her decision was not impulsive, but deliberate, a culmination of introspection, healing, and a deep desire to set the record straight. She hesitated because she knew how her words could be twisted, how tabloids might seize on intimate revelations and reduce them to sensational clickbait. But in recent months, she's realized that Jean's true legacy isn't confined to screens or silver linings, it lives on in honest stories, however bittersweet. By sharing her experiences, she honors his memory in a way that no award or accolade ever could. By revealing the unvarnished truth of their life together, over the next few minutes, you'll hear her voice for the first time in public. You'll discover the hidden chapters of Gene Wilder's final years, chapters that reveal not just fading health, but enduring devotion. You'll learn why she resisted telling these stories for so long, and what finally convinced her to break her silence. And you'll see how her revelations recast familiar memories, turning laughter into something richer, more elusive, and infinitely more human. Stay with us, because what comes next is a departure from the usual retrospectives. There are no stale movie stills or recycled trivia. Instead, you'll witness personal diaries, archived letters, and first-hand accounts from the woman who loved him most. You'll feel the weight of a legacy reshaped by intimacy and truth. And by the end, you'll understand why, 8 years on, Gene Wilder's greatest performance may well have been the quieter, off-camera love story he shared with his wife. From the moment their eyes met across that crowded Hollywood room, something undefinable passed between them, a spark of recognition that felt almost like destiny. She was there as a guest of a mutual friend, drifting through clusters of actors and producers, when she saw him laughing with a group by the bar. His expression was luminous, a playful tilt of the head, as if every punchline carried a secret meant only for her. It was the kind of scene that feels orchestrated by fate, and in the retelling, she always pauses on that detail, the way his laughter sounded like an invitation rather than an echo. They spoke briefly that night, exchanging jokes about the failing cocktail service and the odd chatter of fame. But it was enough. The next morning, she woke to find his name scrawled on a napkin slipped beneath her door. In those early days, they existed in a world apart from the glitz. Date nights were impromptu trips to dusty bookstores where they hunted down obscure first editions, or long drives to the coast in a battered convertible, windows down and radio playing old jazz records. They bonded over shared quirks, her love of amateur photography, his fascination with fencing, and built a small universe on spontaneous road trips, countless cups of cheap diner coffee, and shared curiosity about the world beyond film sets. Contrary to what tabloids might have guessed, they didn't talk endlessly about scripts or premieres. Instead, they discussed childhood dreams, childhood fears, the odd jobs they'd once held. She taught him patience through the lens of her camera, he taught her humor as a balm for every bump along the way. But as Gene's star began its rapid ascent, that intimate sanctuary started to feel fragile. Offers rolled in, scripts from top directors, photo shoots in Europe, lucrative endorsement deals. She watched as the invitations multiplied, each one pulling him further into a world she had never sought. While she rejoiced at his success, she also felt the first twinges of displacement. There were evenings when she waited at home, staring out the window for his car, only to find a note on the countertop, delayed in transit, be back late. Sorry, love. In time, dinners turned into late-night takeout, whispered plans for travel were replaced by scattered calendars filled with shoot dates and festival appearances. Amidst the glamour, they faced ordinary challenges too. Money, surprisingly, became a point of tension. Before Hollywood, they both lived on modest budgets. Suddenly, paychecks padded with six-figure sums introduced choices neither had anticipated: expensive real estate, high-end restaurants, luxury gifts. She admits now that she struggled to reconcile her frugal instincts with the sudden influx of wealth. Though he urged her to spend freely, to indulge herself, she held back, fearful of losing touch with the woman she had been before the fame. The friction wasn't dramatic, it was quieter, an undercurrent of misunderstanding whenever paperwork arrived demanding thousands of dollars or when credit card statements felt too high to reconcile with the memories of cheaper days. Contrast this with the relationships they observed around them. In Hollywood circles, a new power couple emerged each season, dazzling on red carpets and dominating gossip columns. They seemed to thrive in the limelight, their every smile and whispered glance dissected by fans and pundits alike. But in private, Gene and his wife built a buffer of normalcy: movie nights at home with a scratched-up VCR, takeaways in styrofoam containers, and mornings when he would forget to shave, and she would tease him for looking like a professor on spring break. That ordinary tenderness, she insists, was their greatest strength. It reminded them that their partnership was not defined by fame but by the simple acts of acceptance and support that endure. When cameras are switched off of their wedding, held in secret at a small registry office, was emblematic of this devotion to privacy. Instead of a grand affair, they invited only a handful of close friends, actors who had become siblings, a few casting directors, and her own brother, who served as best man. No media attended, no photographers were hired. The sole photograph from the day is one she treasures, a grainy black and white Polaroid capturing the two of them stepping into the sunshine, hands clasped, faces illuminated by an easy joy. Later, when fans searched for wedding details, they found nothing but a brief notice in a European film magazine. That choice, to celebrate in the quiet, foreshadowed the silence she would maintain after his death, a vow to protect the sanctity of their shared moments. As the disease advanced, their routines evolved once more. Weekdays became structured with memory exercises, puzzles, photo identification games, snippets from old film scripts to jog recognition. She hired a music therapist who introduced cello sonatas and jazz ballads, knowing how deeply he cherished music's ability to stir forgotten emotions. On weekends, she escorted him to quiet parks where he could sit and watch squirrels with a childlike fascination. When he smiled at a passerby, dropping coins into a fountain, she felt a surge of pride, a reminder that his spirit remained undimmed through it all. She carried a secret hope that by documenting every tender triumph and heartbreaking setback, she could someday share a narrative richer and more honest than any tabloid's caricature. And now, 8 years on, that moment has arrived, and now, 8 years after Jean's passing, she has at last steeled herself to share the intimate chronicle she has been guarding. The decision didn't come lightly. She revisited each letter, each journal entry, and each voice memo, filtering out anything that might feel voyeuristic rather than illuminating. What remains is a portrait of a creative soul who fought exhaustion and self-doubt with the same fierce determination he used to craft each comedic beat. In her first revelation, she describes the notebook he carried everywhere, a tattered leather volume filled with lines he scribbled between takes, reflections on character motivations, half-formed punchlines, and sometimes, in spidery handwriting, personal confessions about fear and loneliness. She reads a few passages aloud in our exclusive interview. "I laugh to keep the darkness away," he had written during a sleepless night in London, "but sometimes I worry the laughter won't come." Contrast those private fears with the effervescent energy he showed on camera. He was the man who made others laugh until they cried, yet behind the scenes he wrestled with moments of acute vulnerability. She reveals how, on the afternoon before shooting Blazing Saddles, he confided that he wondered if he was losing his comedic touch. She kept the filming schedule open for him that day, encouraging him to take walks in the studio garden and sketch gags in the margins of his script. By evening, he returned to set with a grin and improvised the legendary custard pie SWAT sequence. That story, she insists, exemplifies the unspoken support system they built, one that allowed him to transform doubt into laughter. In another passage, she describes the last poem he ever composed, 8 lines scrawled on the back of a theater program, written days before he forgot the names of his own children's characters. It begins with an image of a wilted rose, then spirals into a meditation on memory's fragility. Petals fall but fragrance stays. She pauses as she reads it into the microphone, eyes glistening. He was always preoccupied by the ephemeral, she says, not because he feared endings, but because he knew that what we leave behind can touch people long after we're gone. Those 8 lines, once hidden in a drawer, now stand as a testament to his enduring insight. Then there are the recordings. Over the years, she discreetly used a small digital recorder, anonymously suggested by a close friend, to capture his off-the-cuff reflections. One audio clip features him describing the genesis of young Frankenstein in his characteristic drawl. "I saw a poster for a German expressionist film, and I thought, what if a mad scientist had a marketing budget?" His laughter echoes against the walls as he reenacts a rehearsal with Marty Feldman, voices pitched in playful mimicry. It's a rare moment of unguarded creativity that no actor's diary ever fully reveals. When we play that clip, it's clear why she believes these soundbites carry more authenticity than any interview excerpt. She also discloses a trove of letters exchanged with Mel Brooks, written long before their first major collaboration. In one heartfelt missive, Jean confesses that he admires Mel's fearless inventiveness but fears he will never measure up. Mel's reply, which she reads for the first time on camera, chides him gently, "If you don't believe you're capable of greatness, how will anyone else?" That exchange, she says, illuminates the mutual respect that fueled their partnership and underscores a universal truth: behind every triumphant performer is a quiet network of encouragement. Of course, her revelations aren't limited to highlights. She recounts a difficult winter when she found him inconsolable after a particularly harsh day of memory lapses. He had forgotten lines on a small theater cameo and demanded to tear down every poster featuring his face. She resisted, reminding him of the joy those films brought to people of all ages. She sat beside him that night, holding his hand, and read passages from his favorite Steinbeck novel until his breathing steadied. It wasn't glamorous, she admits, but I saw in that moment that caring for him meant sharing his pain as fiercely as I celebrated his triumphs. One of her most poignant disclosures is the story of the final words he spoke to her. It wasn't on his deathbed; instead, she found it written in his journal from a summer afternoon 2 years before he passed. He had calmly paused mid-entry, then scribbled in large, deliberate letters, "Thank you for being my laughter when I could not find a joke." She had read it then and stored it away, too overwhelmed to share. Today, she says it aloud, turning toward the camera, "I kept it because it was ours. But now, I know the world deserves to hear it." At that moment in our interview, the studio falls silent, not awkwardly, but reverently, because even seasoned crew members find themselves holding back tears. Throughout this revelation, she underscores a core message: Gene Wilder's true legacy isn't confined to celluloid or the echo of a punchline. It resides in vulnerability embraced and love sustained, in the knowledge that laughter and sorrow can coexist. "He showed me," she says, "that joy is richer when we acknowledge the shadows alongside the light. And that," she believes, "is a lesson the world needs now more than ever." As her voice fades, we cut to archival footage of Gene, eyes twinkling under the brim of his hat, delivering the line, "We are the music makers, and we are the dreamers of dreams." But this time, the clip lingers longer, allowing viewers to witness the man who chose to speak softly at the end, rather than command the stage. The contrast between the boyish grin on screen and the introspective poet in her memoir invites a fresh appreciation of an artist who was never simply a caricature of whimsy. As you close this chapter of remembrance, consider what aspects of your own narrative remain hidden. What small fragment of kindness or spark of creativity might change how you are understood? Gene Wilder's final and perhaps greatest act was to inspire laughter; his wife's is to awaken reverence for the silent spaces between the lines. Combined, they offer a blueprint for living and for remembering that we ignore at our peril. May we carry forward their example, valuing not only the moments that dazzle but also those that unfold quietly, in the safe havens of private hearts. And so, in the end, what remains is not the volume of applause or the glitter of marquee lights, but the soft echo of moments shared in quiet corners, those unguarded fragments that build a life's true architecture. Gene Wilder's wife has chosen to unveil these hidden chambers not out of vanity or desire for accolades, but from a profound belief that authenticity matters more than myth. She reminds us that every public figure lives a private existence, filled with victories that never make the headlines and struggles that never find a byline. When she lifts the veil between the man we cheered for on screen and the person who held his hand in darkness, she challenges us to embrace the full spectrum of human experience. Contrast this act of revelation with the typical celebrity tell-all, which often trades intimacy for sensationalism, compelling audiences to gawk rather than to reflect. Here, the motivation is neither scandal nor titillation, it is reverence. Each letter she shares, each recording she releases, is curated to illuminate rather than to exploit. In preserving the dignity of moments both exultant and painful, she not only honors her husband's memory but also preserves the sanctity of their bond. The result is a tapestry of narratives that invites us to see a legend not as a vessel of perfection but as a fellow traveler on life's winding road. Her final gift, woven through her memoir and the archival materials, is the invitation to witness laughter and loss entwined like threads in a single garment. We see the whimsical whimsy of Dr. Frankenstein's laboratory side by side with the humbling fragility of a mind in decline. We hear the bold tones of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, followed by the quavering inflections of a man rediscovering joy in simple melodies. This duality is not a contradiction but a testament to the resilience of human spirit, the ability to find light even as darkness encroaches. Imagine a classroom where students study his films not merely for their comedic genius, but as case studies in emotional complexity. Picture a workshop where actors recite his unpublished lines, discovering that his true craft lay in the spaces between laughter and lament. Envision a conference where caregivers share strategies inspired by the gentle redirections and daily rituals he and his wife perfected. These scenarios may sound like distant possibilities, but they are exactly the outcomes she hopes to inspire by opening her private archives to the world. The narrative she constructs also serves as a mirror, reflecting our own unspoken stories. How many of us keep notebooks of hopes that never found an audience, or photos that capture glimpses of who we are behind the roles we play? How often do we let the fear of judgment silence the memories we most need to share? In revealing her own archive, Gene Wilder's wife models courage for each of us, urging us to document our truths before they slip into oblivion. The act of speaking, she demonstrates, can be an act of liberation for the storyteller and for those who bear witness. Contrast the inertia of unspoken memories with the vitality of shared recollections. A solitary diary gathers dust, a recorded conversation finds resonance. A letter locked away in a drawer fades like ink on worn paper, a published excerpt sparks conversations across generations. Her choice to transform private artifacts into public treasures underscores the multiplier effect of vulnerability. The more we share, the more we connect, the deeper our understanding of one another grows, and so, as this final chapter of Gene Wilder's posthumous narrative unfolds, it does so with a sense of purpose that transcends mere nostalgia. It stretches an open hand to students of film, to historians of culture, to families navigating the complexities of aging, and to creative souls yearning for inspiration. In every corner where someone reads his wife's words or hears his recorded voice, a spark may ignite, whether it be a new documentary, a compassionate caregiving guideline, or a poem penned in private journals. The ripple effects of her disclosures promise to extend far beyond the confines of any theater or streaming service. Perhaps most poignantly, this story concludes not with a curtain call but with a beginning, the beginning of a collective journey to honor the fullness of life, its humor and its heartbreak, its triumphs and its trials. Gene Wilder's laughter remains immortal on celluloid, but it is the echo of his vulnerability, preserved by the love and dedication of his wife, that invites us into a deeper communion. In bearing witness to their truth, we affirm that our own stories, too, deserve to be told in their entirety. And now, dear viewer, the archive awaits you. Within its pages and recordings lies an invitation to laugh, to weep, and to remember that the richest legacies are composed not only of public feats but of private moments held in trust. Take up that invitation. Read the letters. Listen to the voice memos. Sit with the photographs. Let them speak to the complexity that resides within us all. In doing so, you honor not only Gene Wilder's extraordinary life but also the profound power of vulnerability and love. Finally, she issues a gentle invitation to view the full collection of letters and recordings, now housed in a public archive dedicated to his memory. She hopes that historians, fans, and other lovers of creativity will explore these documents and discover not only an actor but a philosopher of laughter. Take what you need from his life, she offers, but please remember that the stories that touched him were the ones told softly in private. As we reflect on these intimate revelations, it becomes clear that Gene Wilder's story resonates far beyond Hollywood's gilded gates. His wife's decision to speak, to lift the curtain on the private chapters of his life, serves as both a tribute and an invitation to embrace complexity, to honor vulnerability, and to recognize that our legacies are shaped as much by unguarded moments as by grand public achievements. In the coming years, historians will sift through box office figures and critical reviews, yet the true measure of his impact may lie in the quiet smiles elicited by a well-worn page of his poetry or in the hush that falls over a room when one hears his final words for the first time. This realization brings us to a broader truth: every life of consequence carries hidden depths waiting to be uncovered. Contrast that notion with the way we often consume celebrity narratives today, soundbite by soundbite, scandal by scandal, curated for maximum viral impact. We click and scroll, absorbing highlights without pausing to consider the humanity beneath the headlines. Gene Wilder's wife challenges us to slow down and listen, to read entire letters rather than skim them, to linger over passages that unsettle as much as they enchant. It is a call for mindful remembrance, an appeal to resist the temptation of sensationalism in favor of authenticity. By sharing her archives in full, she not only preserves his dignity but models a template for honoring any life with nuance and respect. Her revelations also prompt us to rethink the caregiving narratives that often go untold. Alzheimer's and aging, in their relentless progression, tend to be portrayed either as harrowing tragedies or as inspirational heroics. Rarely do we see the honest space in between, days filled with equal measures of tenderness and exhaustion, laughter and grief. Through her memoir excerpts and recorded dialogues, we glimpse the delicate dance of two people navigating love amid decline. She does not sentimentalize the struggle; instead, she documents the ordinary acts of support, a guiding hand here, a gentle redirection there, that sustained them. It's a masterclass in compassionate caregiving, one that invites medical professionals, family members, and policymakers to consider the emotional architecture of care as integral to treatment. Moreover, this narrative reframes our understanding of creative genius itself. Wilder is often celebrated for crafting eccentric characters and electric comedic moments, yet his wife's testimony illuminates a different source of his artistry, an unyielding willingness to confront darkness with humor, to translate personal frailty into shared joy. The leather-bound notebook of half-finished gags and midnight reflections shows us that creativity is less about spontaneous brilliance and more about persistent curiosity, about turning inward questions into outward possibilities. For aspiring writers and performers, her disclosures are a roadmap. Channels for vulnerability can become conduits for innovation, and behind every comedic flourish lies a human heart striving to be heard. Contrast this careful process with the overnight success myth that pervades modern media culture. We idolize overnight sensations and breakout stars as if their talents emerged fully formed, bypassing years of obscurity. Gene Wilder's trajectory tells a different story, one of incremental progress, rejections, course corrections, and personal growth. His wife's archives chronicle false starts and unproduced scripts alongside celebrated hits, reminding us that resilience is forged through missteps as much as through triumphs. In cheering his classics, we too often overlook the drafts that never made it to screen and the inner dialogues that shaped each revision. By exposing those drafts and dialogues, she offers a counter-narrative, one that celebrates the messy alchemy of artistic evolution. Her decision to release these materials under a public archive further underscores a communal ethos. Rather than hoarding private treasures for exclusive exhibitions or lucrative memoir deals, she places them within reach of scholars, filmmakers, and fans worldwide. This democratization of legacy challenges proprietary models of cultural ownership. It suggests that the richest inheritance one can leave is not a sealed trust or a franchise, but a living repository that invites collaboration and reinterpretation. Future documentarians might stitch together new documentaries, theater groups might stage lost scenes, educators might incorporate his personal notes into curricula on performance art. In opening her vault, she transcends the role of widow and becomes custodian of a shared cultural inheritance. Amidst these broader implications, one final personal note: she concludes her revelations by returning to the simple phrase he once whispered in his final coherent moments, "I trust you." Those 3 words, tender and unscripted, encapsulate the essence of their relationship. It was a bond rooted in mutual faith, a belief that no matter how much is forgotten, some connections endure. In that trust, she found the courage to share their story with the world, and in sharing it, she invites each of us to examine the trusts we hold with our own loved ones. What stories remain unspoken in our families? Which overlooked diaries carry the power to deepen understanding across generations? Her active disclosure is ultimately a benediction, a gentle urging to speak our truths before they slip beyond recall.